Good afternoon or morning as it may be for you. I am excited to introduce Fractal Encrypt on the podcast here at Bitcoiners United. As we largely know, Fractal Encrypt is a well-known Bitcoin cypherpunk artist. He combines aspects of math, software, technology, chemistry, and all of this into artwork, into biological interfaces, and many more things that we will explore. He might be referred to as a crystal digger, a temple builder. One of his well-known pieces is the Bitcoin full node, which you've seen many places. It's like a cypherpunk chronometer. It reminiscent to me like the Antikythera type of mechanism applied to Bitcoin, and it's featured on the Genesis edition, the cover of Bitcoin Art magazine out recently, and it's been a symbol of technical genius, how and what Bitcoin is. His work can be found on timechainartifacts.com, which we'll take a look at, and many more aspects of amazing work that he has done and is working on. Fractal Encrypt, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. That was a very kind intro. Thank you.
Well, so many people honor your work and the aspects of just the quality of it, the precision, the sleek detail, the materials used. I'll refer to a quote by Arthur C. Clarke. He had written that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I feel like the work you do comparably is like, any sufficiently advanced form of art could be indistinguishable from magic. And so I can look at your art pieces, like particularly the clock, the crystal clock you made, and there's things about it that's just like completely magic. Where do you find this like inspiration, if you will?
Wow, that was a very interesting kind of overview there. But the Arthur C. Clarke quote is actually something very close to my heart. I can deeply relate to that quote, and it's something that I've actually, kind of referenced in my mind over the years. I come back to that over and over again because it's just so true, and we see it over and over again. And Bitcoin is the perfect example of technology and magic kind of merging, because it's just cryptography in a way is kind of like a magic. It's like it gives the average Bitcoiner the ability to cast a spell and create a private key that no power on earth can violate. If you perform the ritual correctly, then there's no power on earth. There's no army that can force that private key out of the math itself. Of course, they can $5 rent you out of it, but it's like the spell is unbreakable in and of itself. Without you being the weakest link there, the actual magic that's created is extremely powerful, and it's something that we can use. And I love how kind of code is something that does transform our everyday life. So code is being like a magical spell or something. If you think of an incantation or something you speak into the world that then causes something to happen, well, hey, that's exactly how like every industrial motion machine works. If you think of the way a bridge works, it's like lifting up and down because there's code telling it to do that. So it's like we're literally kind of working with this magical language that causes reactions in the real world, and there's this interplay between the two. So I think a lot of that is where I draw inspiration from. There's just Bitcoin itself is extremely interesting and intriguing, and I think what inspires me is just finding these points of interest that are very magical and kind of bringing light to them. I like to find something that's interesting to myself and then basically create the art around that, like something that I think is really super cool. And then the fact of the matter is, if anybody else kind of gets it or not, it doesn't really matter, because I do. But the other side of that is that the people that do get it tend to be like people that I like, like-minded folks, it's a way that the people that are similar to you in mindset to some degree can find you, and you can find them, and so it's kind of like flying a pirate flag in a way.
And Bitcoin represents that so easily for a community at various levels. But when I go to an event or conference or like the adjacent art gallery, it's like if you're there, you're at a certain level, like you get probably a lot. And so you find your people in a way, you can relate to it. And there's a real niche in art for the Bitcoin community. Like, for example, Bitcoin Art Magazine is organizing, just connecting all the artists. And it's just, you could say it's early. I mean, you are super early in this space, but for up and coming artists, it's like, don't feel like, oh, well, there's a lot of stuff out there. It's like just the pure creation is the universe. And you can get really philosophical with that, but like the act of creation itself is reality. So, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and I try to tell people, just like you said, there's actually, for those thinking of being creative, and if you're intimidated by what's already out there, I think that there's only a drop in the bucket out there. Like there's so much room for new content and new creation and new art in the Bitcoin space that it's limitless. So realistically, whatever is interesting to you or whatever is like sparks your passion, you create art related to that, and it's fulfilling in and of itself, whether you sell it or not. There's something that's like gratifying in a human sense to put your hands on something and turn something from your mind, like your thoughts, into a physical thing that you can then look at and share with other people, and they can connect with even without you there. Kind of like you were saying, like you like to go to the art galleries at conferences. Like I'll usually be at those galleries and I'll like watch people interact with the art, but I don't usually like tell them who I am or like
Right.
it's just because I love to see like the authentic interaction that people have with the art, because me as a viewer of art, not as even a creator, I always love standing in the presence of the physical objects. Like you go to a museum and you actually see the thing in front of you versus just looking at the pictures online or on your phone. And it sounds cliche, but there's really something to that cliche. It's cliche for a reason, that standing in front of a piece of art, I don't know, it just, to me, it's more emotional than seeing it online or in a picture, where even that can be very emotionally engaging, and like, you can really feel that. I just like one of the good examples of that is I've done some art curation for events for art galleries at Bitcoin conferences, and then people will submit their art to me. So I basically put the gallery together through online submissions. But when I actually am in the gallery and physically see the pieces for the first time, it's like, whoa, like a lot of it's really like, it's, it makes an impression, because
Totally.
there's something lost in scale and size and color and dimension, and in media, that I don't think translates well. So I think there's always an interesting space to like show art or display art, because it gets people out to come interact with something in real life, and we're just losing that to such a high degree nowadays, that it's just so easy to stay inside your house and never leave. Like you could just have food delivered to your house, you could have just like everything you need basically through the internet to some degree, and no interactions with humans. And I think that's fine to some people, but I do think like there's a value in getting together and actually having these group experiences.
Yeah, it's all about relationships. And while we talk, I'm just going to be throwing stuff up on the screen here to show off some of the various work you've been part of and that you've created yourself. So many people got beaten over the head in years past about staying indoors and following all these weird social rules and being afraid of the outside. And we're like having to relearn again, like get outside, interact with people, do that face to face. So much is virtual. And when, sort of like going to a conference, I can say, well, I can watch the talks online, or I can interact with people online. I can always just do Twitter. But when you go and you're there, we are humans and our spirits just don't connect the same, except when we're in person, or your relationship with art. When you're there in person and you can look it or touch it or whatever, there's a gestalt to all of it that is much more than just the little sum of its parts. And that's what's important. That's what speaks to our spirits, I would say. That it's not just intellectual, it's not just technical. Sort of like Bitcoin itself, it's not just a technical innovation. It's like a cultural artifact. I've heard, perhaps you said, a cultural phenomenon, a cultural artifact. It's much bigger than all that. So doing that in person, live, handling or owning the art itself is so much more than sort of knowing everything about it and then intellectualizing that. It's a human spirit experience, if you will.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of that. In fact, like I am a big proponent of, say, going to conferences and then not going to any of the actual talks because I know I can catch them later online. I like to go hang out with other Bitcoiners that are there from out of town that I may never get a chance to see again, or maybe like years before I see them again. So I love taking those opportunities. Same with concerts. Like I'm all in on going to the event and going to see the music and stuff. But half of why I'm there is to like hang out in the parking lot with all the hippies and just like hang out on
Yeah.
the scene and talk to everybody and like make those connections person to person that are just different from what you have online. Realistically, online, you just never know who you're talking to or who you're interacting with. And the fact of the matter is that's true face to face as well. But it's just a different mirror to look through, which is probably a good analogy with the stuff on the
Yeah.
screen.
And when people just look at this artwork, I mean, most obviously it's the high quality. And I just imagine the proof of work involved. I mean, it takes you probably months to make many of these pieces of work. Like the clock here, for example, it's about time. The crystal, the time, the clock of it, and now doesn't it releases Bitcoin? How long does these types of projects take you?
Uh, I would say there's nothing usually that I do that's less than 2 to 3 months. Some of them are, say, like the clock there was probably like a good 6-ish months. And then the 10th full node took me a really long time because it was just a very high pressure one, and it just like I just was kind of over analyzing how long it take. Also, say the one I made for Sailor, I actually made
Right.
twice because I got like self conscious about it at first. I didn't think like the first one was good enough, so I like actually made the entire thing over again.
Oh,
And
wow.
but like that kind of psychoticness it worked out because then he went on TV and put it like all over the place and everything. So if you were gonna feel not okay about it, you might it's like you don't want that out there. But this was my most recent piece, the It's About Time, and the reason I named it that was because I've been digging these quartz crystals for 2.5 decades, 3 decades almost now.
Wow.
And every year I try to go out. I'm not close to there, so it's like always like an expedition to go all the way out to the mountains and stay, like camp in the mines and stuff. So I try to go at least once a year. Not every year I make it, but sometimes I go more than once a year if I'm lucky. And I've always wanted to incorporate some of the quartz crystals into the art that I make, and I never really had an opportunity. And finally, when this piece came along and I was like incorporating all the time relevant pieces, like the hourglass actually has some volcanic sand in it, black volcanic sand, so it's like millions of year old sand inside the
Oh,
hourglass
wow.
itself. So it has that, and then there's the little calendar which we saw earlier, little geared calendar, and the sundial at the top. So it has all these different timekeeping mechanisms, and quartz actually is also deeply related to time. We found out in the 1930s that oscillating quartz at a certain frequency, you'd be able to count the oscillations, and then the count of those was super accurate, and we basically created the whole quartz watch off of that knowledge
Right.
that we gained. So in addition to quartz being used as a timekeeping medium, it's also 190 million years old. So I just found it like a really cool analogy to put in there. So the It's About Time actually came about because I was just thinking, man, it's like all the 25 years I've been wanting to put one of these crystals in an art piece. It's about time I finally figured out how to do it. And then the It's About Time just hit me like, oh, this whole piece is about time. So I think we just nailed this one.
It is Bitcoin's time, and it's so pertinent and amazing. So did you get the crystals yourself? You found them?
Absolutely, yes. The crystals that are on that sculpture, I like dug out of the earth myself. I was the first person to see them in 190 million years, and so
Wow.
yeah, the basically those are hand dug. And you had asked about the Bitcoin that's stored in there, and
Yeah,
that's one of the very interesting things about this. There you go. If you scroll
I
up,
saw
you'll
a
see.
schedule of that. Yes.
Yeah, so if you scroll up a little to the picture above, so that shows that's one of the time lock addresses. So that's the first address. And so what this sculpture has is it hides a private key that unlocks 10 of these time locked Bitcoin addresses, and basically every 21 years it releases a new amount of Bitcoin. So whoever owns that sculpture, they can keep passing it down in the family for 200 years, and it will 210 years it will continue to issue new Bitcoin, so they can use that same key to access the different addresses as that, as that block height actually occurs. So
Yeah, that it's an amazing concept, not just the art and the medium itself, but that Bitcoin, time locked Bitcoin consideration. You just imagine in these years in the future, and I mean, heck, just 100,000 sats being released in the future like that, and it could be this momentous occasion for whatever civilization is awaiting this thing. It could,
right, like you could buy the whole United States for that or something.
yeah, it
At
just
some point.
baffles the mind. Like leading up to it, like a 21-year a huge event. Oh my gosh, it's going to change our whole tribe's life again. It's just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it was something that felt interesting, but it also is like psychologically tricking the owners into caring for my art for hundreds of years. So it's like a really cool, like, because as an artist, you don't never know if like your art is gonna make it or not. Like there's just so much randomness in the world, and sometimes things happen. But like if the family knows there's something important there to store, then they'll actually protect it, I think. So that was like another sly roundabout way, and it also teaches the family about Bitcoin and responsibility and self-custody. So it's like something you can pass down. It's very powerful message, I think, like was what I was trying to put together there.
Totally. Now I had first apparently, and I didn't know it was you, but I mean, when I was early orange pilled and it was Michael Saylor and he was on podcasts, and I would see this piece of work in the background, and
there's a picture of him there, actually, the third one down.
There he is.
Yeah.
When you gave it to him.
Yes.
And so, and you've seen it there, as in situ, if you will, as you delivered it and went to visit. When I first saw this, just intrinsically, not even thinking hard about it, I just thought that is beautiful. And then I found a picture of it and zoomed in, was looking all around, and it's just so much little detail to lose yourself into. I didn't know who had made it. And then then when I heard your name, it was actually in relation to the timechain codex. So I saw the timechain. I can't even remember how I found this. It was on somebody's website, and I'm scrolling down. I'm like, oh, graphic novel by Fractal Encrypt. And it was only, and then so when I looked you up, that's when I saw the full node piece of work, and I started realizing that, oh, you're not like a comic book graphic novel writer, which you are, but you are doing a diverse range of like everything. So you're quite eclectic in that regard. I loved this first. I started going through this just being floored by the big picture concept of it all, and imagining Bitcoin in the long distant future and sci-fi fantasy. And just the artwork is beautiful. What artwork had you done before that led you then to this? Because this is very different.
Well, there's a lot of ground you just covered there.
Yeah, I guess so.
The one of the comments that stuck out to me that I did want to highlight was when you said you saw the sculpture behind Michael Saylor and you thought it was beautiful, and that kind of caused you to look deeper into it and look more at the details. And that's exactly one of the tricks that I'm trying to employ, is to like take some deep Bitcoin knowledge and embed it in something that looks beautiful. Like, so it just, like, the art should just look enticing when you see it anyway, so it kind of tickles your brain to make you wonder what the heck is there. And then the details are there so that the people who actually are seekers, when they look, there's something that they can actually find and be fulfilled, and actually, like, kind of increase their understanding, their knowledge, and really kind of level up themselves. So I think it's a really cool interactive play between art and viewer that occurs between these type of pieces. So I'm very intentional about hiding a whole bunch of information in there, or encoding and stuff. And totally. I give away a lot of, like, hey, there's this in there, there's that in there, but there's always stuff that I leave for other people to just find. And some of them I'm much more like this one. The full node sculpture, I was very intentional about how much I laid out, although there is some hidden things in there. But other ones like the endless chain of mysteries, I left most of that mysterious so people could enjoy kind of finding the different things in there. Now, the time chain codex was super fun for me because that was one of those things that just came out of nowhere. Like I was actually working on another project totally, and this Mid-Journey AI art was just starting to come around, and I guess it was like late 2022, and I saw a couple of the pictures and they just they look dumb to me, and I thought it was very stupid. And I told Gigi, he was like playing around with it. He thought it was awesome, and I was like, "This doesn't look awesome. This looks retarded to me." And he's like, "Go play around with it for a while. Like here's what I'm doing and whatever." So I spent like the weekend just messing around with it, and I was actually like, "Damn, this is actually very interesting," because it's the cool thing I liked about it was that with a pencil, I get exactly what I'm expecting when I make a mark. Like when I move my hand, I know exactly what I'm going to get. But with the AI, like when I told it what I wanted, it wouldn't give me what I asked for, but it would give me something that was like somewhat related. And that was very expansive in terms of like broadening your horizons about your quest for imagery or your quest for what something might look like. And I really enjoyed that interplay. And at one point I saw a YouTube video by a guy that said, "Oh, you can make a comic book with AI and in a weekend or something, or in a day or something." And I was like, "Oh, holy shit, cool." So I watched the video like 3 times, and then I like tried to like figure out how I would do this and what I would like how I would want to do this. And this comic book actually was something that I had suggested to other people. It's based on 3 articles by a gentleman named Drew Van Saul. He wrote Bitcoin Astronomy, numbers 1, 2, and 3. And so these are all graphic novel kind of adaptations or interpretations of his article. And when I read his article, it just really sparked my mind. It's the story of the graphic novel, so everybody kind of understands, is it's basically the future, humanity's future as determined through the Bitcoin lens. So like, where does Bitcoin take us as humanity? And it's really interesting because it kind of stretches out over a long time span. And at first you see, Bitcoin, like there's a lot of turmoil, things go, good and bad, and some nations adopt, some don't. And then at some point Bitcoin gets like global reserve currency status, and they start to see a revival of monarchies and kind of like nation state type citadels growing. And yes, exactly. So so this is his
I just had to
here.
look it up. I'd heard it was based on articles or books, but I'm just not familiar with it.
Yeah, the articles are excellent reads. I definitely suggest them. And in fact, the Time Chain Codex is only based on part 1 and 2. Part 3 of his articles, it goes even farther. So it's like,
oh wow,
yeah. So it's really interesting to kind of think this through. But he takes us from Earth, and then it basically we go from Earth to Mars, and then that's when things kind of get weird, because he's got the center of hash thing, which you have on the screen, and it's related to how long does it take a miner to submit a block to the network that they found.
Right.
So if you found a winning block, can you submit it in a timely fashion so that it propagates and people will give you your reward? Well, the center of hash theory states that the closer you are to a planetary center of hash, the more likely your blocks will be accepted. So on Earth, everybody is at the same distance from the center of hash, because we're all around on a big globe, and the center of the globe is the center of the hash. So we're all pretty much fair game. As soon as you go to Mars, that's no longer true, because like Mars is 3 to 20 minutes away in terms of light seconds or something. So like the time that a Martian miner would be able to submit a block from Mars to the Terran blockchain, it would vary between 3 and 20 minutes. And that's just not like, there's just no way they can compete, long term. So the farther you are away from Earth, the less likely you will be able to like participate in the mining of blocks. You could still use Bitcoin, especially on like second and third layers, Lightning and things like that. But the mining is not possible. So that makes it like that they're in some way economically disadvantaged to Terrans. to
Uh-huh.
earthers, because they're financially subjugated to that. So the answer like that he comes up with is that they would have to make their own Bitcoin type native currency in Mars. And that's
Yeah.
like, it's very controversial in a lot of ways, because people think, oh, it's a shitcoin because it's not Bitcoin.
A
But the
side
fact that
chain, or yeah.
but the fact of the matter is, the center of hash issue forces the Martians into requiring a native Bitcoin chain. And so he calls it Musk coin. I called it Mars coin. And
Uh-huh.
and and in essence, that it basically goes through the revolutionary happenings, because like as Mars coin is evolving, like there's a whole bunch of scammy Mars coins that come up, and like
Yeah.
bullshit shit coinery things that happen. And then people on Earth will also be betting on Mars coin. Like they'll be speculating and making bets as to, and also putting pressures onto which versions they think. But at some point, like the most first principles Bitcoin version will prevail. It's always like a winner take all type situation. So after it's stabilized, they go through kind of a revolutionary war period, and at some point it stabilizes out and they have their economy. And then humanity moves out from Mars and starts moving even farther from the center of hash of all these other things. So now we go out into like the Kuiper belt, and so they have to make like solar blockchains that are based around longer block times. Now they're not just planetary, you have like entire solar systems that can participate in the blockchain, because the block times are longer, so everybody can submit a block and it's still within the time span. And it goes from solar to galactic. And so then there's entire galaxy level blockchains that have like 100-year block times, and
Uh-huh.
and they're extremely valuable for those currencies. so
Yeah. Can you
so
imagine? And and I'd never thought about it. It's like we kind of take for granted the sort of immediacy of the speed of light, but in the distant or maybe not so distant future, if we, humans expand to other planets or beyond, and the time chain is one of the most important aspects to like how society functions economically, what then? Unless we've invented, Star Trek quantum polar opposite particle immediate, communication or something. But still, I love these thought experiences and the experiments and the creativity with it all.
Well, that's one of the most fascinating things about the thought experiment to me in this one, is because in essence, it creates Bitcoin as the incentive for humanity to explore the stars. Because in essence, like there's a part here where it goes into like people will want to go to new worlds and basically settle them and inhabit these new worlds, because they can be the first people that start the blockchain on within the center of hash of that planetary thing. And that there's like a huge financial incentive for you and your entire like generations, that your ancestry, is it, or your descendants, um for that type of thing. So it will incentivize like all kinds of space exploration, because people will want to be rich planetary blockchain starters.
Yeah, it's
Like
amazing to
once you
think
have the
about.
model, yeah, once you have the model, it just starts spreading out, like like the mycelium of money theory that Brandon Quittem has.
Now, when I first found this as well, I think my natural impression was that, typically when you make a comic book or a graphic novel, you have a lot of different people, and you've described this before, but I mean, you might have someone who writes the story, someone who draws it or inks it out, someone who colors it or, draws the pictures, someone who actually writes or puts in the text, and then the editing and the formatting and the printing, all the things. I thought initially you had just done the artwork, but did you actually write the narrative as well here?
Yes, I basically did all those functions that you talk about. And if you look at any comic book that's ever been produced, the beginning is kind of like a movie title sequence, where it does have like every single person that's involved, the writer, the letterer, the artist, the inker, the colorist, and all those are different people. And in this case, like this AI had allowed me to just basically take on all those roles. And so yeah, I wrote the script from those articles that you just showed. I basically went through the article and kind of transformed it into my own Bitcoin maximalist version of the article, and just like made it more like a story-ish. And then but basically it's very true to the articles themselves.
I just find that incredible. I mean, the amount of time and energy and dedication to it, because you know how you can be doing something you really love, and I can get a little rabbit hole tunneled in, blinders on, where I'm enjoying something, and I go and go and go and go to the point where I'm like kind of tired of it. And as an artist, you really kind of have to pace yourself, know yourself, pace, not force it all through just because you're loving it. You got to take breaks and give it time, and then hit it again. Um, I you have described, so with the use of AI, um, there are people with positive, hopeful, positive solution oriented frames of mind. And there are also aspects of our personalities that can kind of get sucked into negativity or black pilled, if you will, or it's just easy sometimes. Oh, well, this and that, and it's not authentic, or now that it's mainstream, it's not cool anymore. AI is such a great tool for creators, um, and it could turn very fiat. People use AI to make lots of fiat as well. It's sort of like throwing spaghetti at the wall. There's a lot of shit out there. And of that, 5% or whatever is going to like rise to the top or remains pretty authentic and high quality. But you think about this, and you mentioned this you were on a podcast yesterday, on Spaces with the Bitcoin art folks. And sort of like you think about the invention of the camera, the invention of the lithograph or printing or various things, they're all just new technologies that empowered new forms of media, new approaches by artists to make different, new, innovative, maybe similar things. And AI is also similar to that, would you say?
I would definitely say that. I definitely agree. I think the thing is like with art, quality basically rises to the top, and it doesn't matter what the medium is. Like people tend to recognize high quality art in every medium when they come across it. Like not everybody likes everything, but like like the stuff that is produced well, that does actually resonate with people, like it finds its own audience like naturally. And I don't necessarily think the medium is important. Like, like somebody may like country music, but also like, Renaissance paintings, or, as well as, just every other thing. So I think like the spectrum, the ability that AI gives people to be creative, like all those technologies that you mentioned, like photographs, lithographs, all those things, like people hated those, or the artists hated those at first because they felt threatened that, their traditional ways of creating art and expressing beauty were now becoming democratized. Like it basically becomes more open to other people that can now do the same thing that you did with a lot of skill, and that is threatening
Right.
to a lot of to the status quo. But if you tend to like I'm always fascinated by leaning into that bleeding edge. Like I want to be part of what this disruption and stuff. So, but the fact of the matter is, one thing I thought in the talk yesterday that I wish I would have said. Now I'm happy that I do have any time to say it. Is that like I love AI? It levels me up in so many ways, but I also hate AI in like some of the ways that I see it used and the way that it gets presented out. And what I mean by that is like there is there's like a lot of the posts that you'll read online now, like they'll have the same type of AI tropes in the writing. So when you're reading something and you kind of read something and you just have this feeling like, oh, I know this is written by AI, not by a person,
You can kind of
then
see it. Yeah.
that feels a certain way to me. So I
Yeah.
think like I think there's a division between like using AI as a crutch and where you should be actually using your internal human abilities to kind of create some differentiation. Like one of the examples, like, and my wife always like points this out when we hear it, just we hear it every single day now, 10 times a day. It's like the AI thing where it says it's not this, it's that, and it's not this, it's that. And that's one of the most common AI things that I think that you see. But there's also just a million of these little AI tropes, and anytime they pop their head out in your day to day, you're just going through your day, it always kind of throws me off and puts me off to whatever it is that I'm interacting with. So I think like you have to learn to use these things tastefully, and I think that taste is more what I was getting at before when I was saying like high quality art rises to the top. It's like there's a a taste factor in creating art that you can't get away from. You know, like no matter what tool you're using, even if it's cheating, like you have to actually be creative and be somewhat clever to come up with output that is actually like something you're proud of, I think. So that's how I
Yeah,
feel.
it'd be like, if like in movie cinema, whatever, like breaking the fourth wall. It may be like, as long as AI is that, not a crutch, but a tool, and supplements or complements or allows an artist to express themselves. You said specifically in the past, you said art is a vessel through which to find yourself. So as long as like that remains authentic, for the artist, for the audience, for its environment, then it is still art. But then if AI becomes so kind of foreground that it kind of breaks that fourth wall, and now what you're seeing is, oh, that's straight up AI, and then you're kind of like, not as not as authentic, not as human. Maybe you've lost some of that spirit, if you will.
Right, like to me, I want to see some interaction, some interplay between the human and the AI. Like what one of the things that my brain is railing against, for example, this comic you're going through is a great example because it like I don't like the AI images in and of themselves. Like say, okay, I create an AI image and I just that's the end of it. Like this is my art, you know, like I go print that on a canvas and hang it on the wall and I'm done. Like I don't think that like that's not where I really think AI art is at this point for me. I like to see it integrated in other things, like here to use it as a storytelling medium. So like each picture is part of the story and it kind of like you're using the art not as a final art piece, but it's part of a greater work that integrates all this together. Like one of the first things that I thought was interesting when I saw this AI stuff when I was doing my initial reviews of it was I saw somebody who had printed some tarot cards and another people that were printing some t-shirts and then the comic book thing. Like those three things really got me thinking of that. Oh, you could, you know, it's just not for making weird pictures. You could actually use the weird pictures to do like really cool stuff. And that really tickled my brain. So I think when I'm reading these AI posts on Twitter and you just think like probably the person didn't write this at all, like they just copy pasted this from ChatGPT versus like versus doing the research in ChatGPT and getting all like the cool things and maybe organizing your thoughts there first, but then actually writing the post yourself so it has like your own voice, I guess, would be like that to me feels like an authentic use of a tool versus using it as a crutch to actually write your post and you just copy the shit and fucking drop it in there. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Well, and the incredible work you put into this, and not to belabor it, but I mean, going from this set of articles and this work to, okay, creating art and various art and a lot of art, but also writing the story itself. And now yesterday on the spaces, you were on an X space yesterday with Malcolm and some others. Their podcast connected with Bitcoin Art Magazine called the Whole Entire Universe podcast, and you were on there. And now you made reference, and we don't have to go into this at all if you don't want to, but I've got a picture up here right now that they mentioned the idea of like the stoned ape theory, or like, what is consciousness? What is creation? That's sort of the essence of the universe, and what's inspiring to a lot of artists are stretching our brains and our imaginations beyond what we can just kind of muster rationally, and that there are things in this world that, I mean, a lot of different ways that you can impact your body, such that you force yourself to stretch beyond what you thought maybe was possible, or tap into an outer world that you can't just find all by your lonesome self. Is that something you want to talk about at all?
Absolutely. I love talking about
Yeah,
that.
I'm good with it. It's inspiration, and different artists do different things to really push themselves, stretch themselves, tap into something bigger than themselves.
I've always loved Terrence McKenna. And you know, I was a huge fan of his. I listened to like every hour of his podcast or of his like talks that he did back in the early 2000s. I would just have tons of CDs, stacks of CDs of Terrence McKenna stuff. So I was
He's fun to
always a
listen
big,
to. Yeah,
yeah, always a big fan. He's a
he's
great
smart.
bard. And the funny thing is, I remember thinking like, oh man, this is so cool that like, you know, to listen to him talk, I was like, I wonder if I'll ever do anything that people will want to hear me talk. And
Yeah,
so now it's kind of like
absolutely.
interesting that to be in that same situation. But I always love the stone ape theory. I've read some recent things that, that that make some of it what like they don't know if the visual acuity thing actually lines up with reality and a few of the other points, but the idea itself certainly is valid and makes sense. And what his stoned ape theory is that, on the plains of Africa, the apes and the early hominids encountered psychedelic mushrooms because there was cows out there that had cow poop and the mushrooms grew there
Right.
and they looked like a food source to them, so they ate it and they basically became the priest class of those people. And depending on the season, either whether it was a lot of mushrooms, everybody could eat them, or if there's just a little, then just the priests would eat them. But like that was our first interaction with kind of higher thinking. And
Uh-huh.
obviously controversial, but super fun to think about, and also makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. And I've always enjoyed that. But the fact of the matter is, as current modern day humans, the psychedelic experience is one of the very powerful tools that we have access to, that just is like there's no other way to get what psychedelics give you, I think, without actually using psychedelics. Like there's some people that will say, oh, you could get that without drugs, in quotes. You could meditate, you could fast, you could do this, you could stand on your tippy toes for 10 days, or
Right.
whatever it is, and you'll trip. And like that, to me, I've never seen any validity to that. Like it's a don't trust verify thing. Like I've tried standing on my tippy toes for 10 minutes. That shit don't work like acid,
Yeah.
you know?
If you,
So
if you,
like,
yeah, go ahead. I know
psychedelics are
just,
very easy to verify. It's like you take
yeah.
it and it either works or it doesn't. It's like that. It's the acid test is a very good acid test in that sense. So I think like the fact of the matter is they are tools. There's a specific way to use them for each individual. It may be different, and it's not for everybody. And not everybody's kind of made for that type of endeavor. But for those that are, like the ability to actually learn how to use those things with precision is probably one of the most beneficial things. Like it's hard to kind of use any tool unless you give yourself some experience with it. So a lot of the time is just kind of like taking some time to figure these things out. Like if you're able to get one dose of LSD, then okay, that's cool. That's, you just do what you can. But if you actually have the ability to maybe get 10 or 20, then you can kind of just start with like very small pieces, like a quarter of a tab, and just kind of feel your way into it and kind of say like, how does this feel to me, and kind of work your way up to something that maybe is a little bit more involving. And I think like that's a really fun way to do it, because then you have, say, more of a specific substance that you're comfortable with, how a specific dose makes you feel. And
Uh-huh.
just knowing that alone is very powerful. A lot of people will spend a trip freaking out about whether what they took is real or poison or not, because they didn't know the person they got it from. And so like
Sure.
bypassing all that is a very powerful thing, to just feeling comfortable with what you actually own. So places like Colorado, where they've now legalized psychedelic mushrooms, and I think Canada also has very lax laws, and other places are kind of loosening up as well. I think that's a very positive thing, but it's just like anything else. You see like the shit coinery in psychedelia, just like you see shit coinery in Bitcoin. Like,
Uh-huh.
there's
Yeah,
these movements of
psychonauts.
there's these movements of corporations that want to like patent psychedelics for medical reasons, and so
Exactly.
they will control the
Yeah.
medicines and who gets them, and who and what doses and how they flow and all that stuff. So it's like you have to be very careful of the way that you align yourself, and the way that like that the laws are presented versus what they actually are meant to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is one
And
of my favorite pages in the comic. I was talking about it yesterday, how I like to set up every page to look different, and the panels in each page was kind of very purposeful in the way they set it up, and I really like the way this specific page laid out.
yeah, now as a kid loving graphic novels and comic books as you did, I mean there's a real connection in art to the layout. The every page is a little different. The pictures align and flow into each other, and you kind of, as you're taking in the whole page, there's a flow, and you get to lay that out and break it up and make it yours. So like, here's a whole page
Yeah,
with a pertinent point, and then you can break it up. And but anyway, all the layout and formatting of that is part of the creative process you've done here. And I'm not really that experienced in the Psychonaut stuff, but I mean, there's a lot to be said about, set and setting. And then, I mean, I've known Bitcoin veterans who, for PTSD reasons, will microdose like as a prescription to heal themselves. And then, it's nothing to just dive into lightly, I guess I'd say, or I might presume. But so you want to be careful with it if and when you go down there. But have you ever been on such a journey, imagined amazing various, or had thoughts and connections and visuals, and then you come out and you're struggling to translate that into our meat space? Like, oh, it's just beyond that. Like, how do you translate that? Has that ever been a hard thing?
Well, yes, that actually was part of
Constantly.
the. Well, no, not anymore. That was part of the struggle at the beginning, and I actually wrote a whole article on Bitcoin and psychedelics as tools for self-sovereignty, and I go into that exact thing, and I'm basically call it integration, and it's in essence like when you do go into these spaces and you have these kind of experiences with something that you would like to bring back into meat space, like the difference between inexperience and advanced use is the ability to bring that back into your real world and then take action on it. So a lot of people will take psychedelics and you have the vision, you see the light, you know everything, and you've been every single person in the world, and then you come back and Monday, you go back to work and you're just the same, you get back into the same rhythms, and then you fall out of familiarity with that. But it's like, I think the real leveraging of psychedelics is the ability to say, hey, this is what I learned there, and then you come back Monday and you start integrating that, and then you fight against coming back into the old thing. So yes, this is the article here, and I actually give some of my exact methods for using kind of psychedelics for creative work and
Oh, very
whatnot. So
interesting.
yeah, it's kind of a long article. It goes into kind of the whole history of like Bitcoin, computers, cryptography, and psychedelics. So, and how they kind of line up in the same ways, and where the similarities are, and how kind of the self-sovereign individual can use these as tools to kind of better themselves. And like you said, like not everybody has a lot of experience with these things. So I think, and because it's, to some degree it's illegal, so they make it hard for people to become familiar with these things. But I think it's like, for each person, they have to find their own path with this stuff. But for me, it's been a very valuable resource to kind of mine for both inspiration and just self-exploration, just to kind of like as a self-barometer to see who you are and where you are and like what you're really made of to some degree, because there's no there's kind of no lie in the psychedelics. Like you kind of have to face what you are and who you are if you're kind of going through this. You took the ticket, you're taking the ride.
Yeah. I think sort of like that, microdosing with psilocybin type medicine for vets can be rehabilitative. People in our fiat world can get very stuck in a rut, or they just don't know how to escape. And so now this is not financial advice or any kind of medical or personal advice here, but here's an interesting quote just as I'm scrolling down through your article here. Steve Jobs, I've never heard this before. Taking LSD was a profound experience, one of the most important things in my life. It reinforced my sense of what was important, creating great things, putting them into the stream of history and human consciousness as much as I could. So, I mean, you think about the great thinkers in the world and how what they were able to do was, like Apple's mantra has been, like, think different. And some people like don't have the skill or don't have the practice or are kind of stuck or broken or hurt or who knows what. And so for you, these tools are also conducive to staying in a good flow, finding that flow state. And for others, it could be like breaking out of forms of a rut they may have in their life, perhaps. I'm just looking at your article here. Let me go back to that.
Yeah, the article has a lot of fun things. There's some stories in there about one of the early Apple programmers that created a program called HyperCard, and it was one of the very early art design programs that was pre Photoshop, and that guy, but it was super foundational. Like a lot of the early graphic design people all know HyperCard, and it's a very famous, a pivotal part of some of the early, I guess, Apple software. And he said he, figured out how to kind of make that, or had the idea to come up with HyperCard during an LSD trip. And he has a funny quote that I have on video. I have it on one of my tweets that is promoting this article. And he says, well, I'm not saying that every computer programmer should take LSD, but hey, it worked for me.
Yeah, you do you, folks, and
Yeah.
do your own research and then tread carefully and take care of yourself.
Yeah, so I guess I could say the same for artists. Like, I can't say every artist in the world should take LSD, but hey, worked for me.
Yeah. Now, shifting gears just a bit here. So you're featured right on the cover of the Genesis edition of this Bitcoin art magazine. Of course, the full node, highly recognizable, has become a real icon. I'd thrown up a comment on here from our OG, Bring Facts, and he's recognizing it from one that Michael Saylor has. That's where I first saw it. So, absolutely awesome. Now, as we go, I had Asanoa on my podcast here more recently, and he was talking about all these various artists that they've connected with, and all that. As you've kind of taken a little break into 2025 here to, as you've said, you're building up like your fishing net, if you will. So instead of being out there fishing, you're kind of working on your fisherman net. Describe that process to me, or maybe what you're thinking about working on next.
Sure, I'd love to. The Bitcoin Art Magazine was a great opportunity. I was very thankful and honored to have such a prominent placement there, and I do think they did a really great job with that. So I was excited to have them ask me to participate. That was just fantastic. And as far as stopping fishing to create the fishing net, that's extremely frustrating as an artist, to just kind of get out of the flow of creating things, to stop and create, work on your studio in essence. But I think it's like very gratifying, because what I can actually probably do this year versus at the beginning of this year versus what I could do at the beginning of last year is totally transformed. So now it's just a matter of leveraging the abilities that I've put in place and turning those into really cool things. But it's been a long road of just basically building stuff, and then testing it and having a little problem here, and then having to course correct, and it's nothing goes right the first time when you're trying to do construction work, it seems. And finding people to work that will actually do a good job has also been somewhat difficult, because there's been a lot that's been involved in, say, building a new workshop, which is one of the main things that's been taking up this entire year. We put down concrete slabs, built some steel buildings, did the drywall, did the infrastructure in there, put some AC, put power. Each one of those needs its own type of professionals. I did everything I could as much as I could, but a lot of that requires, other people. So it was a huge mission to find people that would do the weird ass work that I wanted done, and then would do a good job that I was happy with, because I'm also super picky, and I do a good job with the work I do, so I expect other people to do that as well. But the whole world don't work like that, and some of it's been a learning experience, but the end result is I'm super happy with where things are right now. And I think I am happy with the fact that I stopped and took the time to do this. It's just hard to kind of stop doing what you love to do what you need to do. I guess I could put it that way, but it's important. And I think that I did the right thing there, because now it should be much more smooth sailing. And I'm still not fully there, there's still a lot. I have a new machine that I got, and it's it actually, I needed to build that workshop to have a place to put it. That was the whole thing. And for almost 2 years it didn't turn on, and like I never turned it on. It required, because like first we had to build the building around it, and then we had to do all those other things, like paint it and do the drywall and all those other things. And we literally built the building around the machine. And like I don't really know how to use it, but like I will learn, or I'm learning. And so it's kind of intimidating, but it's also like the possibilities that it opens up for me are just really exciting.
Yeah, and sometimes you just got to step back and rebuild a new, fresh foundation so that from there you can build up your citadel again or a new direction. This stuff is straight up engineering type of work. I mean, the thought process I can only imagine. Have you ever started building on something or gotten well into it and then realized not that it's garbage, but it was a test that didn't work and you had to step back or start all over again?
Tons of times, all the time I have that. In fact, I would say the things that you see that I do produce are a small portion of what I've produced. And like my throw out area is actually relatively huge. My wife is pretty strict about trying to pull stuff that I've really completed out of the trash and like not letting me throw it out. But a lot of the times, like, yeah, if there's something where I'm working on it and just obviously isn't working, or it's too doesn't work the way I thought, or this doesn't look good, then you just I like failing fast and hard to get it out of the way, so I
Okay.
burn a lot of materials and time on false directions, because it just helps, like when you know where you're not going, it helps you to better know where you are going to some degree. So like and the fact of the matter is, even when I do something that I don't like, or it doesn't work as an actual final art piece, there's always learning that happens in there, whether it's learning a new skill or learning that you don't know, you're not good at that thing. Both of those are equally valuable, you know
Uh-huh. Yeah,
so
you learn from that.
yeah, I just roll with it. Like I just honestly, like you said, how like, oh, I make comic books, I do the mirror sculpture, the woodwork, and so like I honestly just try a lot of things and just see what I'm good at, because like I never want to be bored. Like whatever I did last time, I don't want to do that again. Just try to like recreate what I've already done. I want to try to push the boundaries farther and see what's something I couldn't do before. And that's how I like try to level up my skills. And that's how you kind of build the confidence, because when you have something that damn well you can't do, but then you actually do it, then you basically prove to yourself that you can do what you couldn't do before. And there's a self-confidence that helps with. And there's also just achieving those goals incrementally. It helps you level up in a way that's realistic, I think.
Yeah, being an artist or any kind of creator, I mean, you can psych yourself out wanting to conceptualize every little detail and get everything just perfect, and then find excuses to maybe make it a little better or second guess it, and you hesitate. And sometimes biting the bullet to just go do is the hardest step. You can imagine things and work on the ideas and working on the ideas, and at some point you got to just do or try, and it may or may not work and you have to step back and try again, but you just got to go do sometimes. And now what we're looking at here is this is the endless mysteries metal node, right?
Yeah.
You had said that, so the full node, the one that Sailor has and that people have seen on Bitcoin Art Magazine, that tells you about Bitcoin. But this endless mysteries metal node is like inquiring as to the mystery of Bitcoin and sort of the mystery of the universe. Tell me about that concept. I want to make sure I understand.
Sure. So the little dichotomy yin yang that I have going on between the two sculptures is that the full node sculpture, it tells you about Bitcoin, and Endless Mysteries asks the questions about Bitcoin. So the Endless Mysteries sculpture, like the Bitcoin full node, was supposed to incorporate it, kind of everything that I understood about Bitcoin as far as the issuance and all the protocol rules, and the like the actual code and the social structure, the technical structure, and the financial structure, kind of pulling all those pieces together and basically laying them out for someone. So if they wanted to learn about it, they could kind of go into it and learn. What this one is about is basically like saying, these are all the cool mysteries that I found inside Bitcoin that I actually don't really know the answer to, and I think are cool. And you will be intrigued as well, because I had gone to visit the Coral Castle, which is one of those. It was like
Oh yeah.
it's a really cool monument that one small guy built himself. He was moving like these 30-ton rocks apparently, and says he did it in the same way that the Egyptians built the pyramids, and no one really knows how he did it. And
Yeah.
the fun thing about it is the mystery, because it's like you don't know like how the heck they got, like it's fun to imagine how that happened. So this piece is kind of in homage to the mystery inside Bitcoin, and
Yeah.
how does this whole thing work. And this piece actually has uh, a private key to a full Bitcoin that's time locked. I think it's time locked 100 years into the future, and it wasn't a Bitcoin that I time locked. It was actually time locked by Michael Dunworth, and he was telling me, a few years ago, that he wanted to find a way to make sure that the key was preserved, so that, because obviously if the private key gets lost, then no one will be able to recover that Bitcoin. He wants kind of like the whole world to benefit from it to some degree. So like, in 100 years from now, the private key will become, the time lock will unlock, but the private key is known to the whole world. So anybody can basically get that mining reward. So the cool thing to me is that like individual people may start solo mining just for that one block, like when it untime locks, because they can mine that block to themselves, and then they will get the full Bitcoin. So I think it creates all kinds of fun game theory, 100 years from now, because the value of a full Bitcoin today is right in front of us, and then a value of a full Bitcoin and 100 years from now is probably just going to be unimaginable. So
Oh, I can only imagine.
yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to do with this piece was engraving his private key into the sculpture. So that was one of the first things that I had in mind when I started this piece, because I think time locking is an interesting mystery in and of itself, because it creates a treasure hunt for people in the future.
Yeah. It makes your art stand the test of time, and not just for customers or as an artifact in and of itself. It's an art. It adds to the artifact in time of what Bitcoin is, and I think anyone who says, "Oh yeah, I understand Bitcoin," well, I might just say, "Well, no, you probably don't." I don't know if anyone fully understands Bitcoin. It's just there's so much to it, and beyond just the technology of it, the effect it has on our future and for people is amazing to think about. And then the sheer mystery of its origination itself, the mystery of Satoshi. You can see steps that lead up to it, and you can see people taking the torch and moving forward with it in the future. But as far as where it's going and where it entirely came from, it just remains one of those amazing mysteries. When you mentioned the Coral Castle, the Egyptian pyramids, everywhere across this planet are, what do I say, artifacts on this planet that are incredible mysteries. Like basically, how in the heck did that happen? And we can speculate and try to imagine, but like, really? There's a lot in this world that we really do not understand. And yet our egos tell us, no, 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 we must understand it, or science will fix it at some point, and we'll believe we understand it, and really we're just doing our best. But there's a lot of mystery in this world.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the I definitely agree with you that nobody will ever be able to understand Bitcoin. We're way past that point, because I like to explain it to people in the artist terms. That if you've ever seen the program Photoshop,
Uh-huh.
even if you are like total normie and you look at like Microsoft Word, they said if you open every little option window inside Microsoft Word, you would have no space to type, because there's just so many options inside of it. And Photoshop is the same. It's intimidating to artists. Like the first time you see it, you're like, what the fuck is that? Like so many buttons and little things to do, and I never heard of a layer in my life, and what's a brush inside here, and what's this and that. And like literally there's no, like, so my contention is that there's no one who's an expert on Photoshop, even though it's existed for 30 years, because there's people become experts in like the certain little corners of Photoshop that they use every day in their productive lifestyles. But it's just so vast that there's like no one that could truly, go even Adobe itself has teams that work inside Photoshop that do the different, things. There's,
Oh,
there's
totally.
literally, there's literally no one person now that understands it. It's the same as Bitcoin. Like to think that, and Bitcoin doesn't expose all the options to you that are available. Like most people don't even realize how like expressive the scripting language of Bitcoin allows you to be, and even this is cool right here. Like you have the signed message, like anybody can actually create a message and sign it with Bitcoin and verify, that basically this is something that was said by the holder of this private key. There's just no two ways about it. It's another magic spell. Like there's no breaking that, like the message signed thing that you see there verified, like any other Bitcoiner on the planet can run that same verification and get the same exact result. And that's the important thing, that signature there at the bottom that no one can read, that's identical.
Awesome. Yeah, totally awesome. Now, you'd mentioned, tell me if I'm true, you might be collaborating a bit with Seed Signer on some work, or uh, art connected with their device. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so the past year, since I haven't been able to really use a lot of my traditional tools, I've been working on like just a conception. Like I've been working on a Seed Signer project that's kind of been keeping me busy while I'm like doing all this other things. The project itself has evolved a couple of times. It's not like an official part of any of the Seed Signer thing. It's actually Seed Signer is an open source project, so anybody can use their code, their devices, their specs, and just do your own thing. So I'm just kind of like, I'm not part of the official Seed Signer thing. I'm just doing my own version of it because to me, I think it's a really powerful device. It's like it enables the Bitcoiner to do so many things. Like it's really like a powerful thing. I actually got one of them at a conference one time from the guy that runs the Seed Signer things. Like I met him at I think in 2020 it was, and there wasn't many conferences that year. So I met him early on in that year, and I had the device here and it sat on my shelf for a year. I didn't look at it. I didn't do nothing with it. And at some point I needed to do something, or I wanted to check it out. I booted up the device, and when I started using it, my mind was blown. I was like, holy shit, this is like absolutely insane, this thing. And then one time, like I basically fell in love with it instantly. As soon as I started using it, I was embarrassed that I let it sit for a whole year and didn't touch it because it was like that level of cool. But I lost my train of thought. But in any event,
Yeah, sometimes, little tools like sort of, so I'm going to connect this to like the software stuff, Photoshop or Word or Excel, where it's like, oh, I'm really good at this stuff, but you use like a little fraction of it. And so like in Bitcoin, people would say, oh, you know a lot about Bitcoin. And I'm like, seriously, I use a little fraction of it. It's not like I really fully understand it. And so then when you get a tool like Seed Signer, or people can take self-custody in various ways. We have this MicroSeed product that we build here, and um, you can say, oh, I should do that. I should get off exchange. Okay, did that. Oh, I should secure that seed phrase some way and take self-custody, stamp it in steel, do something different and additional. And sometimes that next step for people can be kind of daunting because it takes a little time, it takes a little work, and you procrastinate because it's not, it's work. I mean, it takes time and energy and work and thought process. So yeah, you get a device and then it like sits on your desk for a month because you're like, oh, I need to do that. And then you do something easier,
I
So,
actually have the MicroSeed sitting in a box outside. I got it like 2 weeks ago, and I haven't
oh,
opened the
awesome.
box. So we're doing the same thing. I guess like I got to get off my ass and get out there and play with it. Because honestly, like I feel like that could be a part of this Seed Signer project as well. Like I feel like like that MicroSeed is such a cool idea of being able to store the full seed in just a single washer. I think that is like
Yeah.
very next level in terms of being able to store and hide and all the whole nine. So I definitely am inspired actually by that product as well. See, it's these cool little super cool things and that really like has nothing to do with code or anything. Like that's a very physical, ephemeral, like hands-on device, like stamping, steel or titanium with the hammer, so I love that. So I think, like, yeah, there's the ability to kind of bridge all this stuff is another interesting thing. So yeah, nobody's ever going to understand all this stuff, but I think, like, the tools of Bitcoin and the physical tools are going to be important for people to learn how to use. So that's why I wanted to do something involved with the seed signer, because I think I was inspired by a lot of the really fancy old weapons, like the guns and the samurai swords that are like highly engraved, and it's like to an obnoxious level, like where they're ceremonial and stuff,
Right.
but they still function. Like, but that to me, it just really tickles something in my brain to see the level of care that's given to that. Because if you really think about it, that samurai sword is, it protects your life, it protects the life of your family, your community. It's like, that's just like the most important thing to you. So yes, you engrave it with great intention. So that's kind of the idea behind the seed signer thing. It's like, you use this to create your own keys, you use this to sign your transactions, you use this, so it's like mission critical item.
Yeah, they say, in design work that, form follows function, but then you also want that form to be sort of have that intrinsic beauty to it as well. And so, I mean, and
You
MicroSeed
showed the
really,
Yeah, you showed the book earlier, and that was something I had to do exactly like that. Form follows function. So first I had to do the design work of the book being able to open and the gears working and the locking mechanisms actually
oh,
unlocking when you
yes.
put the key in the book and all that. So like, it don't make no sense to make it pretty until you already done the mechanics. So like, once you have the mechanics working, then all of a sudden it's that one. So once all those gears are actually working, then you could start to design it and make it look pretty. But until you actually have the function down, like adding the form is nonsensical. You know what I'm saying? So first, the very first thing I did was made sure that everything worked, and I even have some cool videos as I was prototyping it on my Twitter back in the day, of saying, hey, like, here's some things I'm doing. I'm working on gears and how to make it work with the key. And those very early experiments turned into this here, where you're actually able to do that, and the entire book unlocks. And
Yeah, absolutely awesome. Time chain codex inside the book. And yeah, talk about function. It's just super cool at various levels. I mean, it's hard to fully grok, if you will. Um, Now, I uh, just looking at this one here. This is the Time Chain Codex Deluxe. And do you ever get offers for commission? Like, hey, I want to build this or that or the other. I imagine like some work with Seed Signer, or you imagine the next set of potential chapters of the Time Chain Codex. You probably have ideas where you gotta, like, you can't do all of it necessarily, but you got to pick the next thing so that you can make it right. Is that looking hard, or do you have a sense of direction with what you might be working on next?
I no, I definitely have some plans on things that I'm working on next. I usually have more ideas than time, money, and energy. So like, I don't take commissions, like you were saying. I don't take commissions for the reason that, like, I don't want to go off mission. Like, if somebody had something that was extremely intriguing and like really something that was in line with what I wanted to do, then I would, of course, do that. But so far I haven't done any commission work. I just basically, because the thing is, I want to make what I want to make, and like, to some degree you have to invest your own time and energy and money in that. And the book is a good example. Like, the book I haven't actually sold yet, but I have it right next to me. It's about 5 feet from me in a really cool display case, and I love the heck out of that thing. And even if no one buys it, like, that's a very, I like to make art that I like it anyways. So it's like, yeah, very happy with how these things work out.
Totally awesome. Well, so we can go find you on X at Fractal Encrypt. Here, you can see a lot of the work you've been doing, your current thoughts, what you've been sharing, things in your history. You got your artwork here, and I saw this the Sovereign's Grimoire, forging the keys to financial autonomy. Tell me about that.
Dude, this is a really amazing thing that AI also like did, in the sense that was working on the seed signer project, and I have like a set of 21 steps that I kind of outlined that would be involved in kind of creating keys, storing and backing them up, and then also splitting them into multi-sig if you wanted, and kind of hiding those different shards geographically and whatnot. And there's actually a MicroSeed slide in there somewhere where I have
Really?
yeah. It's as you go through the thread, there's like one where it kind of shows like that you can hide things in different places, and one of them is let's see, but that in essence what I did was I took that 21 bullet point list and I fed it into something called it's Gemini's Notebook LM. I hadn't really ever used it before, but I had heard about it. And what it is it's basically you can create like a little folder of information, and then you can ask questions to that information alone. So I basically gave it my 21 steps, and I asked it to create a deep research report based on my 21 steps. And the deep research report it created was really cool. It was missing some things, so I had it create a second one. And then from those reports on my 21 steps, I had it create this what's called a slide deck. And the first slide decks I got were very vanilla and generic, and they looked like, but they were still actually pretty cool, you know. But then I started telling it to give it more. Oh, see, there you go. So
Yeah,
I
cool.
told it to give it more like an artistic flair, like, hey, let's add some of this, and let's add some of this design style and do this. And so I had it make a lot of these, and I even had to tell it, like how I told you at the beginning, how I hate when I see the AI stuff where it says it's not this, it's that, it's not X, it's Y. It did that in some of these slides, but I learned that I could tell it not to do that, and it would tone it down a pretty big degree. So
Yeah.
that was really cool. So, but this was my first time ever using this Notebook LM product from Google. Like I had signed up for the little Google Gemini Pro special that they had during the holidays, where it was like $6 for 3 months of their Pro thing, and it came with this as one of their add-ons. And I was enjoying the Nano Banana image generation a lot more than Midjourney, because it was a lot more precise in understanding things. So this was the first time I saw the Notebook LM, and it had the slide decks. It can make like podcasts from your information, but these slide decks I thought were really cool for Twitter, because each slide you can make as a post on Twitter, which is exactly what you're looking at here. And then I took the slides that it created and then the deep research report that it created and kind of turned it into a little thread of a Bitcoin technical self-custody guide. I was super impressed with how it came out. Like, okay, it's like a little bit of the AI stuff, but I did go through it and like humanize it to a definite degree. So I think it's readable. For those of you that hate reading AI stuff, you should be all right.
No, these look good.
Yeah.
Balancing what AI kind of throws through, and then tailoring that, cleaning that, and then adding to it what have you. I have a friend who's my co-founder with MicroSeed, one of them. He's writing a book, and even as he is writing the book, AI helps him do a lot of research. And so it's not like, well, yeah, AI is not writing people's books per se, as much as you feel like you have like a research team on your side. So it's just such a lever to be able to use.
100%. I was even surprised that when it did the deep research report, how it caught some very fine, nuanced things that Bitcoiners should know. And I was like, damn, like this is really good. I have to share it, you know, because these images are half of it, but like with each image is also like the section of the deep research report that I put with it. And I was just really surprised to see how well it kind of synthesized the original ideas that I had and really fleshed them out into something that was a lot more kind of consumable in some sense. So I thought that was a lot of fun, because it also helped me as just an artist just to flesh the ideas out and see them in a different way. Like this was like, ooh, you know, cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. So speaking of the microseed method here, engraving the seed into metal and then ceremonially destroy all temporary paper records.
Absolutely.
I'll play a funny video here real quick. This is my my sponsor here, real quick. As a Bitcoiner, you know that taking self-custody is critically important. But if you've ever had a seed phrase, you've probably had it written down on something kind of like this. You can hide it or secure it, But paper burns, paper fades, paper gets wet, paper rots, paper blows in the wind. Paper has things written on it that might look important. So get off paper and get yourself a MicroSeed at microseed.io. Get the kit and crank out all the keys you'll ever need forever. That's my funny little promo ad.
No, it's super cool, man. I love that. You know, and I like I said, I have it in the box here, but so I'll know in a minute. But I noticed the washer didn't have numbers in the seed. Does it have the number punches as well?
So you can basically you can punch whatever you want, and so we're not too prescriptive about that. What I can do is if I've got one here, you've got your washer, and you can buy these just at the hardware store as much as you want. It comes with steel, titanium, and a nylon washer if you want to get through metal detector security. And then you've got your little punches, all the letters and all the numbers. And then if it's your Bitcoin seed phrase, you can just stamp number 1 or number 2 or whatever you want, or your own code for knowing where you're at. And then the first 4 letters, your word, or all the word if you want. And then it's super tiny, but then, yeah, basically, you know, once you have it on there and you've stamped and clicked and stamped, and you turn the dial, and then you've got your entire seed phrase on one tiny little washer. So basically it ends up being, you know, super tiny, just a 1-inch washer, and you can put whatever you want on there if you want. So you can number them, keep track of it how you want, code it, encrypt it, cipher it, however you want. But then instead of having to like keep track of a number of washers or have it all on a legible plate, it's super small on one little washer, and it comes with a little magnifying glass so you can look at it if you want. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. And you answered my question there. You said it comes with all the numbers and all the letters. The important thing, the reason I asked, because obviously when you have the Bitcoin seed phrase, the order of those words is absolutely critical. So you don't, like, if you have them all in a circle, you may not know where 1 is, I think. So like, yeah, like I was just making sure, like, I think in the example one, I didn't see numbers in front of the words. It was just words going around. So like it got my brain thinking, oh, you got to put the 1 and then the first word, and then the 2 and then the first, and then the second word. If that makes any sense. I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Yeah. So when I just saw the letters, I got worried that there wasn't numbers, but you answered that question. So as long as there's both, then obviously that's going to be super fun to play with. I actually can't wait to take it out of the box now. That was a great little video. And also I do want to say that, yeah, like I actually in my earlier life, I had a house burned down. 2010. I basically lost everything that I own. Pre-Bitcoin, I didn't lose no Bitcoin in that house fire, but like I lost every comic book I ever had, like every art piece that I still owned, every, you know, all my historical drawings and sketchbooks, everything gone. Like, and I collected books, records, comic books, and all this. Basically nothing that was fire friendly. So I just learned a very, very like early lesson about you can't mess around with like the storage methods. And in fact, for many years I didn't like collect books again. Even nowadays I'm very limited with the physical books that I buy. I do still have the book buying addiction, but I try to tone it down.
Wow. Yeah. And that's where people think, well, I've got my hardware device, or, you know, I've got it locked away safe, and people don't plan for some of the most crazy things, fire, flood, or whatever. And you know, if you've got it on metal and it's tight and secure and obscure, and do what you will, but then you can be like, okay, my house could burn down and it's the washer turned around backwards on the back of my fridge or in my safe or whatever. But
no, I think that's it's a huge peace of mind that most people realize that they don't realize that they're missing out on, because no one expects the unexpected to happen to them. But that's one of the ways that you survive the best, is kind of by being prepared for those uncertainties. You know, don't make yourself crazy about it and, you know, go off a cliff, you know, prepper cliff, I guess. But but be ready, because shit will go sideways on you. Because you know, it's like I always
Yeah.
say when things are good, you just have to recognize, like, be thankful for that and just recognize that very soon something's probably going to come along that's going to be really messed up and you're going to be in downtimes again. But then when you're in downtimes, you just got to know, hey, just hold on because soon we're going to be up again and it's going to be okay. It's just life is like that. You just got to be ready for both sides.
Yep. And Bitcoin secures your future. It's the best property, the hardest asset you can hold. And I have huge hope for the future. I was fairly black pilled until I found Bitcoin, and Bitcoin suddenly created a lot of reason to say, oh, wow, things can all get better. Bitcoin fixes things. And it's like the invention of fire or the wheel or the internet and the printing press. It's just now we have Bitcoin, and we don't even know what that quite means yet because the future is coming. So, hey, Fractal Encrypt, it has been nearly an hour and a half. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's just been an honor to have you. People can find you on X at Fractal Encrypt, and from there they can find your website as well, timechainartifacts.com, where you have all your various stuff, and check it out. Oh, that's another thing too. I mean, you've done auctions in the past. Sometimes artists don't always know how to market or find a value of price for their work, but you've kind of really, I don't know, I don't want to say pioneered, but created a forum for which art can be sold at the price that it deserves. So
I like the auction. Yeah, I like the auction mechanism because it gives you an accurate value of like whatever the art is. Because like as an artist, you kind of never know how to price your art. I think
yeah,
it's always
right.
difficult. So it's nice when you could just let the market like handle that part for you. But another thing I did want to mention is in the time chain codex part of the site, if anybody wanted to, the entire comic book is
Oh,
free. You
yes,
could just
yes.
click on that, and then there's a little link there that says read the full comic here, so you could just read that for free if you're interested in it and if you heard it. Also, if anybody is a Bitcoin artist or interested in doing Bitcoin art, my DMs are open. You can feel free to message me and ask me any questions. I'll be happy to help in any
Yeah.
way I can. If you are doing shitcoins or NFTs, I'll probably tell you to stop doing that. So I'm just going to tell you that now. But I'm certainly looking to be supportive of other artists trying to get into the space. And if you have questions or whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's an amazing piece of work. I'm glad you mentioned that people can see it for free, because I literally clicked on that and was able to get to the Google Doc of it,
Yes.
and that's how I was able to read it. 215 pages in this here version.
Yes.
And so yeah, so I love it. That's where I started on my Fractal Encrypt journey, and then I just look forward to seeing what you have to offer down the road, what you add on your feed, um, and all the things to come. I'm super excited to have you. So yeah, again, thanks for joining me and telling me all about everything that you're working on, and then I look forward to what's coming. So
Oh yeah, man, it was a great time. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you.
cool. Thanks for joining, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Bye.